It's time for Class Racing Today, the podcast for the NHRA class racing fan. Welcome back to Class Racing Today, classracingtoday.com, classracingtoday@gmail.com. If you have any questions or comments, you can send them there. If you're watching live on Facebook, you can also send us a comment in the chats. If you want to help support the show, remember, you can directly support the show on classracingtoday.com. Find the donate button. You get to choose the value you get out of the show and turn that back into dollars and send it our way so we can continue these conversations with people in the stock and super stock world and around NHRA. Brian is back in studio after a long hiatus, we say. Probably not, but also if you're watching live on Facebook, you can send stars as another way to say that you like us. So thank you very much. Brian, how are you today?
Good. I was technically not on the show, but I did spend a lot of time. I pretty much watched the whole thing from my little booth at the farm show, and people walk by like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "Oh, check this out. It's really awesome." So they had no idea what they were looking like. There's like, this is not farm parts or seed or chemical. Why are we watching this? I'm like, because Bobby's awesome, and Turk is just like the best guy ever. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed spectating from the outskirts, and I would have loved to have been on that, but about the time I'm on, I'd been getting interrupted by all the old ladies asking where my free candy is. So
you could have said, hang on, I got to finish this interview first.
Yeah, I don't give anything away at farm shows. Like, you want to come talk to me, I'll give you advice and sell you parts, but take all your free cap and go somewhere else.
Nice.
But go to the booth next door.
Well, that's the problem. Like, spring is coming. Like, I woke up like, oh my God, it's almost spring. I have all this work to get done before my farmers can go to the field. And somehow yesterday I decided I'm going to move my race car trailer because I want to make sure that's in shape before I get busy, because I'll never get a look at it again. It's froze to the ground. Like, I literally hooked onto it. I can't move it. It's like in a snowbank. Like, this is terrible. I sure wish I had a nice shop to put it in, but
Ooh. Why don't you, Brian? What happened there?
God intervened and put it in a pile,
you know
so
what?
now we can start over.
Blaming it on God, that's always a good idea.
No.
So if you remember a couple episodes ago, we were asking for people that could help rebuild that or finish the building. Now we need to start over. What happened?
I think it's a good thing. The 60-mile-an-hour straight west wind on rafters didn't work very good, so now I'll be selling firewood when Bobby's out racing.
Oh my goodness.
I actually feel better about it now, though, because I've blown snow out of it twice. Like, I want to sweep my shop. I don't want to have to blow snow out of it. So now it's just like, all right, it's done. It's over. It's out of my mind. We'll just
bulldoze it out and start over.
Worry about it next summer.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Jim just sent 50 stars.
Awesome.
Appreciate that. Jim Norris.
Cool. How was your weekend, Bobby?
It was pretty good. I was excited to actually go on NHRA.tv and check out some action from Division 2. South Georgia Motorsports Park, we had the first official NHRA points race of the season. And a really cool car won, actually. A 1969 Camaro with a 396 ace stick car. Gotta love when the stick shifts win. Keith Bennett. It's a nice yellow 69 Camaro. And I've actually raced him before when I went down to Florida. And he's a really nice guy, and he watches and listens to the show. So congratulations, Keith Bennett, on your win. You're number one in the points nationally, ranked number one right now. So congratulations. And then Austin Alvey took the win in Super Stock. He's got a 2005 Pontiac Sunfire. GTG automatic is his class. So not sure what engine combination he's running, probably a 305 or a 350 of some kind. And he got it done in Super Stock. So congratulations, Austin Alvey. That kid is all of possibly 21 years old, maybe. I don't even know if he was old enough to go have a celebratory drink after the race. But if he was, be safe and congratulations. And hope to see all these guys down at Gainesville. I'm heading there in a couple weeks for the Gator Nationals, and I can't wait to get out of this miserable weather and get down there and smell, hear, touch some nice race cars. So
I'm curious if the 69 Camaro stick guys are happy that the whole shipping weight debacle ended, because, you know, that took out pretty much 3 of the fastest A-stick cars in the country when they changed that. But now that's changed back, and they're back in the party. So
Yeah, I don't understand what the whole point of that was. I mean, okay, they went through and they revisited all the shipping weights over the last 60 years, and apparently a ton of changes need to be made, which threw everybody through a loop, 4 days before the first race of the season. So combos disappeared, people's natural classes were changed, everybody was confused. And then NHRA came back out and said, never mind. So now, is it never mind forever, or is it never mind until 2023? I think it's never mind until 2023. But all the racers are saying, why do we even have shipping weights anymore? Why not just take your horsepower rating, multiply it by whichever class weight break you want to go into, and that's it. Like, why do I have to add 400 pounds to my car because the natural class is N? Why can't I just, I want to run L or I want to run K or something? Why can't I just do 13 times my horsepower rating and add the 170, which I don't even know why there's that 170 driver weight anyway. I'm only 130 pounds, so that's kind of like overweight for me. And just put the car in the class that I want to put it in. So that's the ongoing argument. We'll see where that goes. We'll keep you updated on anything that happens with that. They don't use shipping weights anymore as far as Superstock GT is concerned. I've never understood how you classify your car in GT. I think I finally understand it now. But before, when there were shipping weights involved, and then there was a plus or minus 250 pounds, that's the part that I just didn't understand. They got rid of all of that, and they do it this way, where you just take your horsepower rating and find a class. People want that to happen in regular stock and regular super stock. So
what
like
about
I said,
the
we'll see where that goes.
What about the fundamental issue that the Copos and drag packs never had a shipping weight? So virtually you punished all the combinations. The Firebird's been around for 20 years being raced, and all of a sudden they made a huge change, dropped it a couple classes, but yet all the new cars aren't getting touched because there's not even a shipping weight on a Copo or a drag pack, from what I understand. It's like, I'm not opposed to what they're doing, but I don't know that they had it all figured out when they did it either. Let's figure it out now and change it in like August when people can still prepare for it.
Right. Or change it, have it all figured out now, change it
for the next season.
November 6th after the race season's finished. And everybody has all winter to figure out where their car is going to go and classify. It's a situation where they just started shooting the gun without aiming at something. It was just a rushed job. It sounded like from our end. So enough about that. We'll see where that goes. I don't know about the factory cars.
I will say though, the timing of that was released on Lonnie Grimm's anniversary. How do you think he just like threw the phone away, like going out to eat anniversary supper with your wife? That phone was blowing up. Like, oh my, happy anniversary, honey! I'm going to be on the phone for the next 3 days.
Talk about a job that I just would not want to have. Woof, man. Call screening.
Well, we appreciate what they're doing.
Yeah, we do. I like that they're fixing things. I like that they're taking initiative. That is good. I'm not going to take that away from them. So keep it up, NHRA. Just maybe the timing of it or a little more transparency leading up to it could help in that situation. All right, let's learn about oil. All right, oil, friction, piston rings. You got it. Stock and super stock. These are performance-based classes. No matter how badly some try to take that away and turning it into a bracket class, but we like to get every ounce of power we can. So this is why we like educational and informative episodes. So we went out and hunted down a very well-known tribologist. Brian, do you know what a tribologist does? I just feel like it's just somebody who's smarter than me when I hear that word.
I feel it's like one of those words you just make up so you sound smart. Like, right? What do you do? I'm a tribologist. I can't even say that word. Like, it's
when your parents say, "What are you studying at school?" Liberal arts? You getting something? No, I'm a tribologist. All right, I don't know what that is, but it sounds good. I'll pay the tuition. All right, well known son of a famous NASCAR team driver owner, Lake Speed. We have Lake Speed Jr. on the show. Lake Speed Jr., how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys. And tribology is the study of friction, wear, and lubrication. It is a real term. I like it because it is a weird term, right? Most people don't know it. So it's like, what the hell is that? Oh, it's friction, wear, and lubrication.
Is your business card like a little bit longer than the average business card just to fit?
It should be. I used, when I first got the certification, that was, like a decade and a half ago, something like that. There was only like 700 people who were actually certified on the whole planet with this credential. So I had the big giant thing on the business card. So yeah, it was like, my name was really small down here and all that, because I had the big, here's my award on my chest. I have to brag that, I have this certification, that I'm an oil nerd. So
I feel like
whatever.
That would be a good pickup line, when you're young and single.
I was going to say that. I was like, I'm not going to go there. We always laughed about it. Yeah, I'm a certified lubrication specialist. That's right. Just don't go there. So anyway.
That's better that way.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how you got started. Where did you get your education in this field?
Well, so back to you were saying, we're racers, whether you're going straight line or going in circles, left, right, you got to have power. And, for me, my dad being a NASCAR driver, I worked in NASCAR teams pretty much my whole life. My first job was pushing a broom in a NASCAR shop. Of course, it was my dad's, but ended up going to work at Joe Gibbs Racing, was very fortunate to be there during what I kind of consider the halcyon era of NASCAR. That mid 2000s, money was not an object. It was whatever you wanted to do it, go fast, win races, win championships. I always made these jokes that, Home Depot, FedEx, M&Ms, Interstate Batteries never asked us how much money we spent on oil. They didn't care. It was how much money, how many races did you win? Did you win a championship? That's all they cared about. So getting to work for Mark Cronquist, who was the head engine guy at Gibbs, still the head engine guy at Gibbs, we really looked into, okay, how do we make these engines more efficient? Because we couldn't make them bigger, and they had an RPM limit, so we couldn't turn them higher RPM. So it was like, well, how do we squeeze more power out of what we have? You can't change this carburetor size. You can't change displacement. You can't change RPM. So essentially, we were limited in terms of how much air you could process. So that's really, if you think about an engine, it's a chemical reactor. That's why I love engines, because it's all about chemistry, actually. You can only create as much energy from combustion as you can put air in the engine. The fuel just comes along with the air, right? You got to get the air fuel ratio correct to try to maximize power. But if I'm limited on air, then that's my limit of power I can make. Well, that's not how much power gets to the rear wheels. Now, this in my world, because I'm not the airflow guy. There's a lot of smart guys about airflow. I'm not one of them. But once you have that airflow and you create that combustion, how much of that combustion power do I make it to the rear wheels? That's where tribology comes in. That's where we need to have good ring seal. That's where you have to have low friction. So we set off on a long project of many years of working. We worked, with the guys here at Total Seal. That's how I got to be connected with Total Seal, was that we were developing in concert lower friction rings, basically thinner, lower tension rings. We worked on the honing process. We worked on the oil. I always call it ring seal soup. We go to Indianapolis in December for the PRI show, and you can go out to St. Elmo's and you can have dinner. And, a lot of times they'll bring, you can have the appetizers. They can bring you the bean soup, and either you like the soup or you don't like the soup. If they bring you the shrimp cocktail, well, you can eat the shrimp or you can eat the cocktail sauce, or you can scrape the cocktail sauce if you don't want it. The soup, step. You can't change that, right? You can order steak dinner. If you don't like the potatoes, you don't have to eat them. You can still eat your steak. With soup, it's all or nothing. And because it's a combination. That's what ring seal is. It's not just the piston. It's not just the rings. It's not the oil. It's not the cylinder finish. It's all of it working together. And that's where the real efficiency came in. And so we spent years working on that. And so part of that process, we worked with a company called Lubrizol. So Lubrizol is one of the companies that's remember the old BASF commercials? We don't make the products you buy, we make them better. BASF is a commercial chemical company that makes what we call intermediates. It's things that chemical companies use to make end products. So Lubrizol is that for the oil and fuel industry. They make the additives that go into every brand of oil, every brand of fuel. And there's only 4 companies that actually make the additives. You got Lubrizol, Afton, Ornite, and Phenium. So you think about that. No one's ever heard of those names probably. But you go into Walmart or you can go into AutoZone and there's a whole giant wall full of all these miracle molecules and stuff. Those guys don't make that stuff. They don't make the additives. They just buy the additives and they blend it together. They blend and package and market, but they don't make the molecules. It's the Lubrizols, the Aftons, Ornites, and Pheniums that make molecules. So at Gibbs, we had a partnership with Lubrizol. And I was fortunate enough to, because of that R&D relationship with Lubrizol, to be able to go through their training program. And that's how I got to become a tribologist, was that I was fortunate enough that they had a mentorship program, and I was able to mentor with one of the senior guys at Lubrizol and have him teach me all kinds of things and go through their classes. And I learned a lot of stuff, and it's been fun. And for the racer, the benefit of all this is we can help you go faster. It's literally, we can help you go a lot faster. We work on this program called the Engine Performance Expo, which is kind of a virtual version of what AETC was. Remember, the old AETC was the Advanced Engine Technology Conference, which happened before PRI. And then a couple of years ago, they killed it off. But a bunch of us, like myself, Ben Strader, Billy Godbold, John Kazi, we loved AETC. And so we kind of came up with this idea, this Engine Performance Expo, to kind of resurrect that concept, but make it virtual so you didn't have to travel and do all that kind of stuff. Long story short, we built an engine this year. And, Robert, we were talking at Indy this year about oil viscosity and how important that is. And, people watching this, if you're a class racer, you already kind of know this, but here's some actual numbers for you. So we've got this engine we're building, which is an LS engine, 392 cubic inch LS, and was built to be boosted. So it had a blower cam in it and all that, but we were breaking in the engine NA just to make sure everything was right and good before we hooked up the Pro Charger and made some boost. So we broke it in on BR30, which is 5W30 braking oil. And it's got a 1 millimeter, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter ring package in it. It's a gapless gas ported top ring. So it's a pretty tricked out piece. Because the pistons were, because, hey, this is 2021, right? This is going on. It's hard to get parts. So we were able to find some Mala pistons that were power pack shelf pistons we could get. That was great, but they didn't have any gas ports. That's fine. We can gas port the ring. It's even better than gas porting the piston, actually. So we do the gapless gas ported ring. We get everything together, breaking it in a 5W30 braking oil, BR30, run it in, boom. All right, let's looking good. So we're not going to run 530 on boost. So Ben Strader's there, and we're at his dyno. He's like, hey, let's put the 1540 in there, and let's just see what happens. Because the 1540 is the race oil. Let's just see how much power difference there is between this BR30 and the 1540 race oil. This is an aluminum rod engine. So when we're going to make 1,300 horsepower, you're not doing that on 530. Now, interesting thing here is most of the testing I've been doing most of my life is, NASCAR type stuff. It's endurance testing. You're running engines for hours at a time, not seconds at a time. So everything's at 200 degrees oil temperature or water temperature, probably 250, 260 degrees oil temperature. Well, this is like a drag race deal, like almost like pro stockish. We're running 100 degrees water temperature, 120 degrees oil temperature. So at that low of a temperature, when we go from 5W30 to 15W40, we lost 25 horsepower. Let that sink in for a second. 25, just changing viscosity.
Right.
We didn't change oil temperature. We didn't change water temperature. We went from 530 to 15W40 and dropped 25 horsepower. It even shocked me. I didn't think the 1540 would be as good as the 530. I knew it would lose a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought it may lose 4 or 5.
Right.
Not 25.
Yeah.
And you hear stories about people gaining tons of power picking up lots of ET, going to light oils when they're running heads up. Well, that's why. And it's all about what we call viscosity index. So all oils get thinner as they get hotter. I mean, think about maple syrup in your refrigerator. You pull it out of the fridge, that stuff pours pretty thick. But once you get it in the hot pancake, it thins out. So that's probably one of the most misunderstood things about oil is that W in 5W20 doesn't stand for weight. It means winter. And the number before the W and the number after the W are not related. Don't even try to relate and say, oh, 520 means it's a 5 when it's cold and a 20 when it's hot. No, that's not true, not even remotely true. The number before the W is a cold cranking measurement. Imagine, your engine turning over. So that's at negative 30 degrees Celsius is where they're measuring the flow measurement. And it's not even a flow measurement. It's a rotational torque measurement. Like how much torque does it take to turn the engine over? So they're taking the oil, they're chilling it down, they're putting a rod in it, and they're measuring the rotational torque it takes to turn the oil in, or turn that rod in the oil at that temperature. So the lower the number, the easier it flows, or easier it cranks, essentially. That's the idea. The number after the W is measured at 100 degrees Celsius. So that's 212 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right.
That's a flow measurement. So if you say like this example with the Engine Performance Expo engine, so there's a term called centistoke, right? That's not made up again. Another tribology.
No, yeah, I know.
Making this stuff up. Centistoke is the actual flow measurement. You measure the time it takes for the oil to go from point A to point B. That's called a centistoke. So the higher the number, the slower the flow.
Right.
So for example, with that losing 25 horsepower, the 5W30 oil at 120 degrees Fahrenheit oil temperature was about 32 centistokes. That 15W40 at 120 degrees Fahrenheit was 70 centistokes.
Yeah,
so it was double,
much more. Yeah.
And double the viscosity. This is why it lost so much horsepower. So that's the key to unlocking how much power potential you can extract from the engine. Right there, you're fixed. You're class racing. You can't put more air. You can't put more fuel. Well, how do I get more out? You have to know your operating oil temperature. If you don't have a temperature probe somewhere in your oil system to know what your oil temperature is, you are flying blind and you're probably leaving power on the table.
So, well, that's where I wanted to take you. I did a huge dive into viscosity index last year, and talked to Driven Race Oil, Kyle Fickler, and a couple engineers from there. And all right, let's just take the Driven XP1. It's the 5W20. The viscosity at 104 degrees Fahrenheit is 45.18. And then the viscosity at 212 degrees Fahrenheit is 8.87. So those are centistokes, right? Those two numbers. So that's where I was saying, how is it a 520, but it's actually an 845. So I thought that the 520 was supposed to be the centistokes when they were talking about the viscosity, the 5W20, but you just clearly told me that that's not how that works. You told us how that does work. The other number, the number I was putting the most emphasis on throughout all the research, was the viscosity index. Okay, the Driven XP1 has a viscosity index of 180, which is pretty high. And they said that number relates the change in the oil to the temperature increase. So some oils that I was running, I run Brad Penn 1030 in my super stock car, and that only had a VI of 138, which I thought was terrible. But then there's a Royal Purple 030 that had a viscosity index of 220, which was amazing. So I was basing my oil selection on, okay, who's got the highest VI number, because that means the oil is going to change the least, which is very crucial 90% of the time for us, because we're a bracket. We have to be predictable. Right. We need consistency. Now, if it comes time for a heads up, sure, you can either switch to a lighter oil, which scares me sometimes because I kind of run like a hydraulic lifter that's, shimmed up a little bit. I'm more about longevity than I am about performance sometimes, because I don't have 3 engines sitting on the shelf. But I'm also a fan of taking oil out of the car and reducing the number of quarts that are in the oil pan. So I know I just went on a tangent in 3 different directions right there. The whole point of that little thing was the Centistokes and how much that changes in relation to the VI. So is that something we should be looking at for viscosity index whenever we purchase oil?
Well, this brings up a great topic. So back to, you mentioned Centistokes and how you were doing that research with the viscosity index. So it's the Centistoke is only what you use to measure the number after the W. Okay. The number before the W is measured in centipoise. So there are 2 different things, right? One's rotational, one's flow, completely separate. To your point about viscosity index, generally speaking, the higher the viscosity index, the more stable the oil will be in terms of that Centistoke relative to temperature change, which is a good thing. Now, the trick is you can increase viscosity index by adding what's called viscosity index improver additives. So the more viscosity index improver additive you put in the oil, typically the higher the viscosity index is going to be, the larger the split between the number before the W and after the W. Like most things in life, there is no free lunch. So what can happen is what's called the shear stability. How stable is that polymer to maintaining its structure? Because in a race engine, I said especially an engine that has hydraulic lifters, where you have lots of shear, you have a lot of opportunity for mechanically to shear and tear those polymers. You can lose some of that viscosity index. It will basically lose that operating viscosity. So it may start off and you're right on the edge of how thin you can be, and then it falls off the edge because it shears. So that's, and what I'm saying to this is beware of the trap of looking at the spec sheet and basing your decision solely off the spec sheet. Because what can happen is if you just try to find the oil that has all the best numbers, the highest of everything you think is good, well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work the best in your particular application.
Are those measurements standardized? Like,
yes,
they're all the same. That's industry standard. So everybody's tested on the
industry
same
standard. Yeah. So this should be the same from brand to brand to brand, without a doubt. Now, one of the things that I said, I've been doing this for a long time and had a lot of conversations with people. So this is me kind of giving you, my view of the world, like my soapbox speech here when choosing oil. Most people choose oil backwards. And let me describe what I mean by that. What I mean is they start off with the brand first. They have their brand that they like. Then they say, okay, I like this brand for whatever reason. All right, now what's the sexiest brand, product they have, right? What's the one that has the best spec sheet numbers? Then I'm going to try to make that work in my application. In reality is the brand choice should be the last. You should really start off with your application. What am I doing? Right? And I don't mean what kind of heads you have, what kind of cam you have. I don't care. The oil doesn't know, it doesn't care. It's what am I doing? What fuel am I running? What operating temperature range am I running in? Those are the things that matter the most. Because if I'm running at a very low temperature, then that's going to put me in a certain viscosity range because of what I'm doing, right? The higher the temperature that you run, typically the higher the viscosity is going to need to be, because all oils get thinner as they get hotter, right? Is it kind of a fun thing to think about in terms of we'll call it the operating viscosity. Okay, so pro stock car, NASCAR, 410 sprint car, completely different. Yeah, 500 cubic inch engine running at essentially, we'll call it 100 degrees Fahrenheit. You've got a 358 cubic inch engine running at 220, 240 degrees Fahrenheit. You got a 410 cubic inch engine running on methanol, running at 300 degrees oil temperature. That 410 engine is running at 1550. That NASCAR engine is running a 520. Pro stock cars running a 0W something. Because most of all the numbers below a 20 are made up, because SAE, back in the day, SAE didn't define anything thinner than a 0W20. So any viscosity less than 0.20, it was made up. Well, now they've defined things as a 0.16, a 0.12, even a 0.8. So they you can get thinner. So, but no one's really used those terminologies yet. So we'll just stick with 0W for the pro stock, 520, 15, W50. All right. So you'd say, okay, that 0W, I mean, that is the thinnest oil. Ha ha. But at the operating temperature they run at, that 0.20 runs about, or that 0W in the pro stock runs about 12 centistokes operating viscosity. That cup engine is running about 8 centistokes operating viscosity. And that 1550 and that 410 sprint car is running about 7 centistokes operating viscosity. So the thickest oil is actually running at the lowest operating viscosity of all 3 engines.
Just
That's
shows
the
how
thing that people
important
don't
the
get.
temperature is. Right. I get it.
Bingo. You
Yep.
have to start with temperature. If you don't know temperature, you don't know anything. You're just guessing. So define the application. That's going to dictate the chemistry, because that pro stock engine running at very low temperature, the type of additives, the type of friction modifiers that will give you the most power increase is different than the ones that will run the best at 300 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right.
So
Now, if I told you that my temperature, my engine temperature, because I did put a probe in starting last year because I wanted to learn this stuff, I'm about 150, 150 degrees.
Okay.
Now, that number, when I say the viscosity at 104 Fahrenheit is 44 and the viscosity at 212 is 10, that's not a linear
No,
curve,
not even close to
right.
linear.
So I just can't come up with a line of best fit and say, okay, I'm at 150, so my viscosity is, here. Is there a formula, or is there something we can use where I say, okay, my temperature is 150. What's my viscosity at 150? Is there a way for me to figure that out? So
I know Lubrizol had a calculator that had a web on one of their portals where we could access, because we had, technical actually with them, where we could put in the specifics of the oil. We could put in the viscosity at a couple of different temperatures, enter in the specific gravity, what temperature the specific gravity was measured at, and then it would actually calculate and give you an approximate centistoke number at any temperature you wanted.
Right.
And like most things in math, if you're in between the 2 points, it's more accurate than if you're outside those 2 points. So in your case, a 150 number, you could dial that in and be close enough to be really confident in what it is. There may be some calculators out there. You probably, somebody, if you want to go Google and look at viscosity calculators and see, and for it to be accurate, what it's going to need to know is viscosity in centistokes at a given temperature, and then you're going to need to have specific gravity at a temperature. Now, all those things should be on a spec sheet or an MSDS sheet. So this is information that you should be able to find pretty easy. And if there's a calculator out there that you can find, type it in, then boom, you can be right there.
So I have a quick question, I guess, just to unnerd this a little bit. So dumb it down and make it simple, I guess. So what you're saying is basically you want to run an engine oil temperature so you know what your, basically log that information so you know what your operating temperature of your oil is.
Yes.
Because I'm guessing there's going to be fluctuations in that based on the internal frictions of your motor, like a roller cam compared to hydraulic and stuff like that, correct? That would change the operating oil temperature of the oil?
It can. So the thing that has the most influence on the operating temperature of the engine is actually the piston rings. I know that sounds like I'm a piston ring salesman, but the reality is we actually did a test, last year. We took a 16th, 3/16th ring package, and we ran this test engine that we've had for a long time that we would do cam testing on. And we've got literally thousands of dyno pools in this engine. So we know exactly what temperature this thing runs. And so we took the 16th, 3/16th ring package, and we compared it to a 0.7 2-millimeter ring package. Now, of course, the 0.7 package made more power than the 16th package. But the thing that was the most interesting was that the water temperature and the oil temperature dropped going from the 16th package to the 0.7. So it was literally 25 degrees water temperature, 15 degrees oil temperature dropped. And that's a key thing, is that some people are like, oh, the water temperature went down because you couldn't transfer as much heat out of the piston. No. The rings aren't the only thing transferring heat out of the piston. The oil does too. So if it had just been that we limited the amount of heat transfer from the piston through the rings by making the ring smaller, then the oil temperature would have gone up, right? The water temperature could have gone down, but oil temperature would have gone up. That didn't happen. Both went down. And the reason both went down is because we reduced friction, which is why the horsepower went up 25 horsepower. That was what it's all. Think about it. The piston ring rubbing against the cylinder wall is the number one source of friction in any internal combustion engine, even compressors, right? That's not my term, me saying it. That's Ford Motor Company saying it. That's the Department of Energy saying it. They have public studies they've published. You can go see that document all this stuff. It's about 40% of all engine friction is the piston ring rubbing against the cylinder wall. Now think about it. If you start rubbing your hands together, what happens? It gets warmer. That's what we do on cold days. Isn't that right, Robert? You go outside right now. You're rubbing your hands
right now
to keep them warmed up. So that bigger, higher tension ring generates more heat. And that heat goes into the water. It goes into the oil. If I reduce that friction, not only do I increase horsepower, I also reduce my operating temperature. And that's one of the key things that we did in NASCAR, is when we were limited on the amount of air opening to cool the engine. Well, we want to run that engine as cool as we can because we want to run the least amount of opening for downforce. Crew chiefs like to put duct tape on the front of cars to make more downforce because it makes the car go faster around the corner. So we went on a long process with lots of engineering involved to find a way to make that engine run temperature efficient as possible. And reducing ring size was part of that whole process.
So part of the whole, I run 520. So that's what everybody should run. Well, it's more specific to what your whole, you're basically building an oil to your specific combination of an engine, not just what the engine guy or, I think some people just, I run whatever, 020. And that's, that's got to be the best.
Oil viscosity is just as critical to engine performance as your rocker ratio. I mean, rocker ratio goes right along with your camshaft design, right? You don't just pick a rocker ratio irrespective of your cam lobe and expect to have proper piston to valve clearance and have proper valve timing. No, it has to work together. So your oil viscosity, it goes hand in glove with your cylinder finish, with your bearing clearance, and the operating temperature of the engine. And to get the most performance out of your engine, you need to know those things. You need to know what your bearing clearances are. You need to know what the cylinder finish is, and you need to know what your operating oil temperature is. So if you're not data logging your oil temperature, that's the first thing you need to do. Understand it. Then you can begin to make choices on your oil viscosity based on that.
Is there an optimal centistoke measure for motor oil for an engine. If I know that I operate at 150 degrees Fahrenheit oil temperature, where should I be that my engine would be happiest as far as Stokes is concerned?
Well, so it's going to vary based on bearing clearance. So the wider the bearing clearance, the thicker the Stoke value has to be, because there's a thing called the Strybeck curve, which we won't get into that. We've already probably nerded out deep enough already. But essentially, think of this as viscosity times speed divided by load. So the higher the power of the engine, that's load. And then the higher the RPM of the engine, the less, the oil viscosity factors into that. So it's viscosity times speed. So if I've got a lower RPM engine for the same amount of horsepower, same load, I have to run a higher viscosity. If I run a higher RPM, the same power, I can run a lower viscosity. But if I open that bearing clearance up, now I have less contact area. So I need more viscosity because that load isn't just cylinder pressure. It's cylinder pressure by the contact area. If I narrow that bearing up, I'm reducing the contact area. So I'm increasing the actual load on that bearing because I'm making the contact area smaller. And by opening the bearing clearance up, I'm making the line of contact smaller. So tighter clearances, thinner oil. Looser clearances, thicker oil. And how tight you can run on bearing clearance really depends upon the stiffness of the crankshaft. If it's looking like it's spaghetti in there, you got to open the bearing clearance up. If it's rock solid and moving, then you can really tighten that bearing clearance up, let you run lower viscosity. Again, it's all interrelated. It's soup. That's the key. It's understanding the different variables and then dialing it in. So there's not a one number that just works for everything. It's about getting that package together. And again, the key thing is like if you're looking at your oil temperature, and then you can do things like oil analysis that can give you an idea of how your bearings are holding up, and without having to pull the engine apart and actually pull the caps off and things and look at it. So you can do things to creep up on that number and get it to where you need to be. But once you dial it in and you get it right, man, your engine is going to be really happy. It's going to be more consistent. So there's some things you can do there to gain a little bit of power and gain consistency.
What are your thoughts on like maintenance cycles? Like how many runs should a guy put on his oil?
So that's a great question. And the answer is it depends. And what I mean by that is fuel is the enemy of your oil. Later today, actually in about an hour, less than that maybe, we're doing a webinar with the guys at VP with PERA. So 30 minutes from now, actually, about fuel. So that's a great topic because fuel is the enemy of your oil. And that's what makes the oil have to be changed. The same base oil that we use to make engine oil is the same base oil we use to make rear gear fluid, transmission fluid, or turbine oil. Your gear oil, there's fuel for life transmission fluids. Most vehicle manufacturers recommend 75,000 miles before you change your gear oil. But you're changing your engine oil at maybe 10,000 miles at most. Why? It's the same base oil. The difference is contamination. The number one contamination is fuel. So the richer you run your engine, the more fuel dilution you get in the oil, the more often you have to change the oil. That's the key, which is why, again, oil analysis is a great tool to use to measure how much fuel am I getting in my oil. If I get a lot of fuel dilution in my oil, I think I need to maybe shorten up that drain interval. If I'm getting less fuel dilution in my oil, I can extend that out. I don't have to change it as often. So that's really the key is fuel dilution.
Drag racing oil never really gets up to a high enough temperature to burn any toxins or anything off, from what I was told by the folks at Driven. So
100% true.
I think they said that contributed to drain intervals have to be sooner in a drag race engine. You're never going to get it up to the temperature that you would get like your street vehicle up to, right? So there's moisture in there too. I mean, when you take off, say you take off a valve cover on a day that, is cold or something like that, or winter or something, and you see that, a little bit of that milkshake like substance in there. I mean, does that mean I should just change this immediately, or, is some of that going to burn off? Like,
I mean, water is the enemy. Yeah, water is even worse than fuel. Now, water is a byproduct of combustion. When you have combustion, we are making water in the combustion chamber. That water vapor will get past the rings. It can get into the crankcase. Like you said, if you're not getting that oil temperature up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the boiling point of water, guess what's going to happen? That condensation is just going to build up, build up, build up. It's never going to evaporate off. So it will shorten the life of the oil. It can lead to sludge and a lot of the junk in the oil pans the guys see. Well, that's because it's moisture buildup. So those are good indications. If you're seeing milky stuff in the oil, you either need to heat the oil up to evaporate it out, or you need to change the oil.
Right. And now, since you said we only have a half an hour, synthetic versus conventional, go.
So, back to the spec sheet thing. They all have their pros and cons. So synthetic oils can live longer at extreme temperatures, very high. They can also flow better at very low temperatures. They typically have, we call it, less internal friction, so they can give you more power. So synthetics are really, really great. The downside of synthetics, other than cost, are they don't typically have as much, they call pressure viscosity coefficient. So if you think about a really high spring pressure on a roller cam or a roller tip, that line of contact under that extreme pressure, the oil will not thicken very much. So it can be harder on roller applications having a full synthetic because it doesn't build viscosity there. So it relies on the additive package to do all the work, which means you're going to change it more often, which people don't like doing that, especially when it costs more. But a straight mineral oil, problem with that is straight mineral oil, it's so thick and it's got such a low viscosity index that you're going to compromise on power. So a synthetic blend actually can kind of give you the best of both worlds. So if you've got a high spring pressure application, bushing lifters, things like that, you can get longer roller life, especially needle bearings in bushings. They really like the semi-synthetics. If you're not worrying about longevity of parts, you just want max power, then full synthetic is the way to go. If you have a really high RPM engine where valve springs are really the key to your life, then synthetics can pull more heat out of those valve springs, which means they'll live longer. So it's really not about what I said earlier. It's not about using the spec sheet. No, it's the application always dictates chemistry. That's the lesson to be learned from all this. Application dictates chemistry. And then once you sort all that out, then the choice becomes logical. And then the brand choice is the last thing. You just choose the brand that you trust, that you have a relationship with, or whatever it is. But let the application dictate your choice of chemistry first.
I choose the brand that pays contingency. So
hey, listen, whatever brand you choose,
so
for whatever reason.
Total Seal, what do you think? Driven, what do you think?
So I mean, there's different things, right, for people. Be it contingency is sometimes the choice. Sometimes it's they have a relationship with the company, or they're close by, or they sponsor them, or whatever. I mean, there's different reasons. I mean, that's the great thing about today is that years ago there weren't a lot of good choices, and it was hard to access good oil. Now there's lots of choices, and so it's pretty easy to be able to come up with a combination that's right, and then to be able to source it and make good sense for you.
I want to spin off a little bit, if that's right, Bobby, and I want to talk about rings. Like,
sure.
Obviously coming up with the package of the oil is way more important than I would have ever thought about. Like, what are your thoughts on rings and picking the right ring? I mean, just. Give us your thoughts there. I mean, I'm guessing it's some of the same, or you're saying it's all oil.
Yeah.
Rings don't matter, right?
Well, no, I mean, obviously, if the piston rubbing against the cylinder wall is the number one source of friction in the engine, then it means it should be probably the number one source of consideration past your cylinder heads, right? Because your cylinder head, intake, manifold, camshaft, we know that's huge in terms of being able to make power, because that's all about getting the air into the engine, right? Once we get that air in the engine, now it's about how much of that combustion energy can we actually move to put to the rear tire. That's the biggest thing you have left, right? So beyond camshaft, manifold, and cylinder heads, getting the air in, the next most important thing is your piston ring, which, by the way, it actually kind of relates to getting the air in the engine, because if the piston ring isn't sealed up, then you're not going to get a good signal pulling the air in. So there are people that would say the piston ring is arguably the most important thing in the engine, because try to run your engine without piston rings and see how that goes for you.
Right.
So if you think about what we can do with a piston ring, back to just that engine we did at Shavers, we were talking about was from a 16th, 3/16 down to a 0.72 millimeter, 25 horsepower, 25 degrees of water temperature, 15 degrees oil temperature. That just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what's possible. So if I can go from, say, a ductile moly type ring, say they did an 043, 3 millimeter ring package, and I can go maybe to a 0.7 millimeter ring package. Well, not only am I going to gain power, but we've also seen is the engine's going to be more consistent. That think back to NASCAR, right? Just for an example, early 2000s, the state-of-the-art package was a 043, 3 millimeter ring package. And those engines ran one race. They didn't even run practice and qualifying. They had separate engines for that, because by the end of the one race, 500 miles later, that engine's going to be down 5 to 8 horsepower, because that ductile moly ring was soft. It broke in easy and was pretty forgiving in terms of cylinder bore finish. That was nice, but it wore out over the course of the race. Now, state-of-the-art in NASCAR is a 0.5 millimeter top ring, 0.6 millimeter second ring, 2 millimeter oil ring. And that short block will live 1,600 race miles. So the rings outlive the springs. So they're changing the springs. They're redoing the valve jobs and stuff between races. But right now they can actually run 2 races. They'll run 2 races in the same motor, not even touch it. Not even change the springs. Just let it run.
That's a huge savings.
Well, and here's the thing too. Guess what? It's not down on power either. So it's running 1,600 miles and it's not losing power. And like you said, it's big savings. So yes, that steel ring set costs more than the ductile moly ring set. But not only is there a power benefit to it, there's a huge longevity benefit to it. And to me, that's the real message when it comes to piston rings, is that, man, you can really invest in the consistency of the car. And again, if you're trying to run the same number, you want the engine to be consistent, and a thinner ring package that seals up better is going to give you more consistency in what that engine does.
And in Stock Eliminator, we were limited to factory ring sizes, but now your piston is limited to those sizes, but you can go to the smaller ring package and use spacers.
Right, exactly.
Sounds like what everybody's kind of doing in Stock Eliminator now. How about the oil ring though? How many pounds? I mean, you can get like a heavier, lighter oil ring. You see cars going down the track blowing smoke out, and they're flying. So that, to me, that can't be good. But how are they going so fast? So do you want a loose oil ring?
Oil ring tension is a big thing, and it's one of the tuning tools, if you will. So if you don't have vacuum in the crankcase, then you're going to have a higher oil ring tension to be able to control the oil. Because at some point, if you get so much oil consumption, then you're going to start running into detonation, and it's going to hurt the engine. So you don't want that. If I have vacuum, I have, because oil ring is about scraping the oil off the cylinder wall. So that way there's not excess oil. So if I've got vacuum, which is helping pull that oil down, so there's less oil at the top of the cylinder, I can run less oil ring tension. So then sometimes you can run a Napier second. That gives you even more scraping action. So it's really a combination. You got to think about, the top ring is about sealing. The second ring does mostly oil control with a little bit of sealing. And then the oil ring is 100% just heavy scraping of the oil. So back to oil viscosity. If I'm running a lower viscosity oil, I can get away with a lower oil ring tension. If I'm running crankcase vacuum, if I got a vacuum pump on it, or I'm running dry sump, then I can run less oil viscosity. I can run less oil ring tension. And so it's all back to its combination. So that's really the key and that's one of the things we spend a lot of time on and it's an area to gain power, is dialing in the oil ring tension for the application. So 8-9 pounds is a pretty good number for a wet sump motor without any vacuum. You can get as low as 7, but you're going to start to get into oil consumption. And the thing is, oil rings are springs, like any other spring. They lose tension over time as you cycle them. So that's something you got to keep in mind. We got a new oil ring we come out with called the Endurance oil ring, where we're gas nitriding the oil ring, which raises the tension, but makes it where it doesn't lose as much tension, and that rate stays consistent over time. That way you can really dial in. So the Endurance oil ring is a way to help get you closer to that optimum oil ring tension, and then be able to maintain it so it doesn't drop off over time.
There's like 100 different directions I want to take this in, but I know we're getting short on time here. So okay, 3-ring setup, you're making that sound pretty standard. A 2-ring setup, just not more beneficial then? Why have the second ring?
So the idea of the 2-ring setup is to try to reduce tension. Okay. The second ring isn't about compression sealing. Maybe 20% of the second ring's job is compression sealing. It's about oil control. So it gives you, we'll call it fine oil control, whereas the oil ring is gross oil control. If I eliminate the second ring, I have to increase oil ring tension because somebody's got to do the job. So that's where I say, if you look at every super high-end application, they all run a 3-ring setup. The only time you don't is in some motorcycle applications. It's only because of weight. Because they're running such high RPM, by weight, they have to get rid of that weight. That's the reason why they go away from it. Not because it gives them better oil control or lower friction. It's just literally because of the weight. So I'd say you'd always be better to have a second ring and then run less oil ring tension and have a 3-ring setup than try to run a 2-ring setup.
Okay. It's like a give and take. Yeah. So 3-ring setup. Now, how about gapless rings? There's like pros and cons. Some people say yes, some people say no. Your RPM's too high. Don't do it.
Gapless rings are the synthetic versus conventional of the piston ring world. 100% same thing. And like we mentioned, there are pros and cons. That's why some people love them, some people hate them.
When's a good time to run a gapless versus when isn't?
So here's my favorite reason for running a gapless ring. Boosted applications. Anything that run in methanol or E85. Because when you're running boost, you're going to have to run more in gap. But you're going to start your engine up and it's not going to be at boost yet, and it's not going to be all heated up yet. So guess what? You got this huge in gap, which means you're going to get more fuel into the oil. And like we already said, what's the enemy of your oil? Fuel. Bad gas and all that. So a gapless ring makes it where you don't have that big gap. So you're not paying the price for that big gap when you're running boost or you're running any kind of, highly oxygenated fuel. So I really like gapless ring setups in boosted applications, methanol E85 applications. So that's one reason for a gapless ring setup. Number 2, you can get a stronger intake signal. So in a carbureted application, especially we'll call it limited airflow applications, where you've got to run really, really tight rules and really, really small carburetors, then there's some applications where that higher intake stroke from the gapless can give you a benefit. Now, the trick is a gapless ring, you can't go thinner than a 0.9 millimeter. So that's it. And that's on the ragged edge in terms of size. So if you want to go something thinner because you got higher RPM, then you're going to have to not go gapless. So there's, again, it's trade-offs, pros and cons. I think we said earlier about some about application dictating chemistry. Application kind of dictates piston rings too.
On this side, we're talking roughly 9,000 RPM on a carburetor, about 470 CFM we'll go with. Would you go gapless or not?
I'd do a 0.9 millimeter gapless, gas ported, 0.92 millimeter setup in that. I think that would give you kind of the best of both worlds.
Okay.
It's thin. It's the thinnest you can go and still be gapless. That would be a good setup for that.
Write that one down. I'm glad I got this one on video. This is an episode I just am telling everybody, you're probably just gonna have to watch this one twice because there's so much information in this episode right now. Somebody just said, Jim Norris said this is the most informative, best interview ever. So
thanks
for listening, Jim Norris. Yep. I mean, stock and super stock. This is what we do. We want to squeeze every ounce of power out of these motors that we can.
Right. And see, that's what I grew up in, that NASCAR restrictor plate era where, I mean, you literally cut your arm off for half a horsepower. I mean, we would literally bought $1.5 million dyno at Gibbs to be able to measure tenths of horsepower. And we would get really excited when we picked up like one. It's crazy. It's like you pick up 1 horsepower, you're like, yeah, it was awesome. We're going to win the Daytona 500 this year. I mean, it's crazy. And it's like, I think the last oil we worked on, we picked up like 1.7 horsepower and a restricted engine. And that oil has won, I don't know how many races. I mean, it's won a couple of championships. I am so proud of that oil. It's bad, awesome stuff, we made there for Gibbs. And it was super cool. And you're like, 1.7? Are you kidding? I mean, other people you think a boosted guy is like, huh?
Right.
I can pick up more than with 1 degree of timing with that. Right. We're talking about 1.7. That's just dumb. You pick up a Pro Charger and bolt on 400, 500, 600 horsepower. It's like, you could talk about ones. You guys are crazy, but that's the world I grew up in. So yeah,
you would fit right into the class racing world then. I mean,
I love that stuff.
You are well, you're going to Pomona, so are you going to take part in? I know Total Seal does a little seminar at the track nowadays, so you guys should be having one there, right?
Yes, we are. So the guys from Rottler are coming. Ed Keebler, super experienced guy in terms of honing. So and Keith Jones. So we're gonna do a trackside tech talk, we call it, 1:00 East Pacific time on Friday, right there at Matt Hartford's Pro Stock pit, and we're gonna talk about Pro Stock honing. So some information that Matt's willing to kind of share in terms of what we do with honing processes for a Pro Stock engine and what we kind of see about that. So it's all about ring seal, about that soup, right? Just talk about, that's the thing. We kind of keep going around these things. We're not going to give anybody a specific recipe because everyone has a different taste, right? You're not always making Italian wedding soup. You make it different than you make tomato basil or versus chicken noodle soup. But you still got to make the different soups because the different classes got to have different soup.
All right. So anybody that goes to that, we didn't really talk a whole lot about honing today, but anybody that goes to that and has something to share, I know some of our listeners will definitely be there. Let us know. There was one more question though that I forgot. Yeah. The gas porting rings versus gas porting pistons. Do we not need to gas port pistons anymore? Should we just focus on gas porting rings now from now on?
I mean, of course, I work for Total Seal, so I'm going to be biased about this. Okay. But in my experience of testing it both ways, there's a benefit to gas porting the ring versus gas porting the piston. Doesn't mean that gas porting pistons is bad. It just means that if you're ordering new pistons from scratch, you have the choice. I'd gas port the ring versus gas port the piston. And there's some people that are actually telling us they see it combining them is a benefit. Doing both. Back to combination. So it's just another tool in the toolbox to make a little more power, make it run a little better.
Wow. All right. Well, it's getting to be that time for me to order a set of Pistons, so that's something I definitely have to think about. I hope to see you at the track. You will be at Pomona. Unfortunately, I won't be there, but good luck to everybody that's headed to the Winter Nationals, national event number 1.
Yeah, excited about that. Should be great, you know.
I will be at Gainesville. Will somebody from Total Seal be at Gainesville to give one of the seminars? Because I'd love to go check it out.
We haven't figured the whole schedule out, but I think that might be one of them. So we're going to have a meeting with the guys from Rottler and NHRA on Saturday at Pomona to kind of map out the schedule for the year. We figured, okay, we'll go to Pomona. We'll do the first race of the year, get it kicked off, and then we'll figure out the rest of the plan from there. So hopefully we'll have a schedule for the rest of the year and what events we're going to be doing coming out of this weekend.
I mean, I think I can handle it now. I wrote down everything you said today. If you want me to take that one,
sure, yeah, please.
All you have to do is buy the lunch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Talk about soup like
says,
I did.
One of the best podcasts so far. Thank you for all the info, Lake. Chris Chapman, this has been great. Keep up the good work. So everybody seems to really be appreciative and enjoyed you joining us today, Lake Speed Jr. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank y'all for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we finally got the time to make this happen. We had a great talk, at Indy about doing this, and it's been tons of fun, and we appreciate the feedback and happy to do it again if we ever need to.
All right. Might make you a regular Tech Tuesday. Somebody write that down. All right, Lake Speed. Thank you very much. Brian,
Thanks,
you got
guys.
anything to add there, pal?
No, that was amazing. I think I have a way better understanding of putting everything together. I guess it's not just as easy as putting in there what your friends use. So it was really awesome. I got a lot out of it too.
That's the line of the day right there. It's not as easy as just using what your friends use.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Lake. Have a great time. ClassRacingToday.com, ClassRacingToday@gmail.com. His email address. Remember, you can help support the show. Also, another great way to help support the show is just share it out to your friends. Other racers out there that you know that aren't listening, let them know about it so they can join the conversation as well. We thank all the people that help support the show. Bobby and Brian, have a great week. We will see you all next week. Have a great one. See you later.